Welcome to Straight Talk and Retirement. Your no-hype source for financial advice and making informed choices about your retirement plan. Get on the phone to talk today at 314-931-5877 or text your question to 84126.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement. You're live and local, St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. I'm Aaron Lapidus, president of JBL Financial Services. Our offices are located in beautiful, super hot Olivet, Missouri.
Very steamy.
Very steamy this morning.
Gonna get worse.
Except for these next 2 hours where you can stay inside the house and listen to us. AC, we love it.
Eighth
Everyone
wonder
knows
of the
it.
world, AC.
I should have said that.
Number one predictor of economic growth.
As you can tell, it's just the two of us this morning. Good morning, Rob. How you doing?
I could complain, but nobody'd listen. No, I'm good.
Awesome. Well, we help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a written step-by-step strategy, a real game plan with several goals in mind. First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate.
Second is to deliver a reliable source of income, one they can rely on, so they can do all the things they want to do in retirement.
And third is cost-effectively addressing their health care needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to couple with their Medicare coverage. Then, when they're done enjoying their assets, we help them pass them along to the people they love, whether it's their children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, without Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their wealth managers, we watch their money every single day, and that's why they call us the retirement coaches. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, before we kick off the show, we just want to remind everyone we are live and local, so if you have any questions you've been dying to ask all week, please give us a call, 314-931-5877, or a text message, 84126 on the text line. We promise to try to get to everyone during the show. There are several ways, though, if you miss us, that you can keep in contact with us during the week. You can log on to our website, jblfinancial.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you can click on the Contact Us button, request a coaching session, financial, Medicare, or both. On the lower left-hand side of the screen, you can click the pop-up box that appears that says Sign Up for our monthly newsletter. We call it the Coach's Corner. And not only do we keep the last year or so archived on the website for you, we also send a new newsletter out every single month by email or mail, whichever you'd prefer. Rob, tell us a little bit about what's going on in the August newsletter.
Oh, we got some great articles in the August 2024 newsletter. The first one being Just Your Average Millionaire. The average net worth of U.S. families surpassed $1 million for the first time in 2022. The milestone does not mean that the typical American family are millionaires. However, the growth of U.S. families' net worth was the largest on record, and there's a great little infographic breaking down net worth by cohort. Pretty interesting. Next, our next article, 8 great investing quotes. You know, investing can be challenging, whether you're a seasoned vet or a novice. It's very easy to lose confidence if things turn south, or could get caught up in some of that irrational exuberance when things start to go well. With that in mind, this article leaves you with 8 great investing quotes that hopefully will give you some perspective in good markets and bad. And one of them I've zeroed in on is take measured risk.
Okay, that's hysterical because I was looking at this one thinking that's to the point.
Right. Aim small, miss small. I mean, you know.
Take measured
right.
risk.
You don't want to be way out there on a ledge, but at the same time, you want to take part in a lot of these growth stories and, you know, part of the American economy. So, again, you just have to balance risk and reward and make sure that you're staying within those risk tolerances, excuse me.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite articles.
Yeah, no, I'm always a sucker for great quotes. Always have been, whether it be finance, political, history, like
motivational.
Right. What did Caesar say? That's great. Our next article, thinking of selling your home, don't be surprised by capital gains taxes. You know, the Taxpayer Relief Act of 1997 provided homeowners who sell their primary residence an exclusion from cap gains of $250,000 for single filers and $500,000 for joint filers. At the time, the price of a new home was $145,000, so the exclusion seemed generous and allowed people to freely move from one property to another. Unfortunately, the exclusion was not indexed to inflation, and what seemed generous in 1997 is not so generous in 2024. That said, this is a great article that highlights how to qualify for the full exclusion, increasing your basis for lower taxes, and they also provide some insights into what this means for people who inherit a home. It's got a great little example in the left-hand corner that will give you a mock demonstration of what the full exclusion looks like and how to apply those deductions.
Absolutely. I mean, I always like going over this with people because the rules have changed, and buying and selling homes isn't something people do on a regular basis unless, you happen to be a flipper, maybe you move frequently for your job. Most people just buy a few homes during their lifetime, so they may not have known about the changes to the tax code. And when we're talking about the basis in a home, it's not just the sale price, so what you paid for the home. It also includes any any home improvements that you've had over the years. They could
New roof.
Right. They could be small or large as long as they're considered improvements and you have the documentation for them. So even house painting, that's not a cheap endeavor any longer, is considered an improvement. Also, any purchase costs you had when purchasing the home also goes towards the basis. When you have that basis, that's what would be tax-free to you. The exclusion gets added on top of that, would increase the non-taxable portion of the proceeds from the home. Anything above that is what gets you the hopefully long-term capital gains, which means you own the home for at least a year.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here doing the math in my head. If the average home price was $145,000 in 97, it's like you could buy 3 houses for that. Like the median home price now has got to be about $400,000.
So you could have bought 3 homes.
Right. In today's, looking at the price of one compared to where we are now. And 1997 is not that, really not that far. What are we talking? Talking about not even 30 years.
It is interesting, the unintended consequences of things that happen. For example, a lot of people couldn't predict what happened in the housing market as the Federal Reserve started to raise interest rates. They thought the exact opposite would happen, which is that it would start pretty rapidly to tank the market because mortgage rates are one of the most sensitive rates against the Fed funds rate, which means they're going to move the most dramatically as the Fed makes decisions. We're already seeing them move in anticipation of a Fed rate cut, but most people didn't predict that we would see home values continuing to increase over the last several years. Only now are we starting to see that home prices are starting to come down slightly, but with the restriction in supply on the market, that's still holding home prices pretty high.
Well, they say that everyone that's locked into a sub 3% mortgage, they don't want to move because they don't want to take on another mortgage at almost double what they were paying prior.
Certainly, because think about it, most people are, especially if you are in that median home range, you're looking to move up for whatever the reason might be, different neighborhood, larger home because your family's increased in size. Well, now that the mortgage rate has doubled, you're essentially going to be able to buy half the home for the same mortgage, which doesn't usually compute to a larger home.
Absolutely. And our last article, the IRS wants to know more about your gig income. If you earn money from a payment app or marketplace, you may be affected by some tax changes enacted by the 2021 American Rescue Plan. The law requires third parties to report business transactions totaling over $600 per year. The previous reporting threshold was $20,000 and 200 business transactions. This is a timely and informative piece that you will definitely want to peruse if you participate in the gig economy.
Certainly, if you're retired and maybe you were doing some gig work in your free time, we've always said that in most cases, taxes are easier in retirement than they were while you're working. Most people are able to accomplish that on their own using TurboTax or a similar software, or if they'd like to engage with a tax professional. Usually, it's not a laborious process. But now that there are changes, you might want to just double check with whomever you're working with to make sure you're still on the right track. And before we move on to our topics of the day, we had a few questions come in from the newsletter.
And our first texter writes, no capital gains if you're purchasing another home of at least equal value. Is that correct?
So what this is referring to is part of the tax code where you're going to do a like exchange. The rules are a little bit more complicated than just equal value. It has to be a like property, which means, for example, you can't replace a residential home with a commercial piece of property or vice versa. Most people with their primary residence are taking advantage of the $250,000 to $500,000 exclusion versus using the exchange. Exchanges are usually at this point utilized for second homes, and that brings up one of the other questions that we had, which is, can you speak about the taxes owed on vacation homes? So the exclusion that we were talking about and that is available in the newsletter is primarily and specifically for primary residences. So if you own two homes, for example, a vacation home that's not considered your primary residence, the taxes are going to work slightly differently. You still get to maintain the basis in your home, which is what you paid for it. You can still add in the purchase costs like you can with with your primary residence. You can also add in any additional improvements that you made to the home over time. Those numbers combined equal your basis. There is no exclusion above and beyond that when you make the sale of the home. So that means whatever the sale price is less your basis that you've calculated using not just the purchase price but those other numbers we just mentioned is going to give you what the taxable amount is going to be to you. If you own the property for over a year, you get to consider that a long-term capital gain. If you owned it for less than a year, it's going to be considered a short-term capital gain.
And our next texter writes, are moving costs, for example, paying a moving company, tax deductible? I am seeing your TV commercials, by the way, looking good. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. So now we're definitely getting down into
the weeds,
into the nitty-gritty of what is taxable and what is not. I do not believe that moving costs, unfortunately, are tax deductible. However,
they should be.
That wasn't where I was going to go with it. I think everything should be tax deductible. Is great. You definitely want to consult with a tax professional when you are incurring such a large taxable event. So making sure that you've included everything in that basis that you are able to include. You could probably look this up on the IRS.gov website. However, if you're working with an accountant or, like I said, another tax professional, they should be able to give you a very clear and defined list of what you can include in the basis.
I'm still smarting over the $600 threshold for the gig economy. That's like they're really starting to put the hammer down. I mean,
they want their tax dollars. The debt's increasing $1 trillion every 100 days.
I mean, if you get 600, that's like $50 a month. I mean, if you make more than $50 a month, yeah, we want to talk to you. That's.
I also think it's for a lot of transactional work, like when people are buying and selling things. Like, you had those huge eBay sellers back in the day, things like that.
Yeah. I remember when eBay first came out, that was like a huge deal.
Yes, it was.
People were watching their auctions. Oh, I got to, someone beat me out at the last minute. Like, that was big business back in the day.
Well, like many things, perfect information started to creep into eBay, and so you couldn't sell, your beat-up Tiger Woods card for $10,000 anymore. People caught on that there were a few more copies of that card.
I always just mash the buy it now button. Like, I don't.
I just want it
right,
now.
I'm not trying to bid on any of this. I don't care about I want it now. When can you have it here? But, yeah, that's my interactions with the old eBay.
That's fair enough. All right. We have a lot of important things on our mind today, but what's more important is what's on yours. So please give us a call, 314-931-5877, or text us 84126 from the text line. We call our newsletter The Coach's Corner, and you can easily access it on our website. Just click on that box on the lower left-hand side of the screen that says sign up, and we'll send that out to you every single month.
And we keep the last year to 18 months on there, so if there's any other past newsletters you want to peruse, they're all right there for you.
Awesome. So while we're waiting for your texts and your calls, your thoughts, why don't we talk a little bit about David?
We received an email from David this week, and we thought we'd include that in this week's show. And David writes us and says, I would like to retire later this year. I am thinking I can, but I need to arrange a coaching session for confirmation. I have been a regular listener for many years. Thank you for that, David. I am so close to retirement. Should I move my funds out of the stock market mutual funds into cash to protect the gains I have made in the past?
Great question. We get this all of the time. Now, we do know we're missing a lot of information.
Right.
How old is David? Is David married? How much is in David's 401k? We're pretty slim on the data. However, I think we can give some generalized answers for you. The first thing we would always recommend is you want to keep at least 6 to 12 months of cash in an emergency fund.
Of what you're spending. So if your spending is, say, $2,500 a month, you may want to keep $30,000 to the side because that's a year of your expenses, or maybe half that if you feel more comfortable with 6 months of your expenses. But your spending expenses would constitute a nice, we'll call it year vault.
Absolutely. And now, most people hold this vault outside of their retirement accounts. It's usually at their local bank or credit union. Maybe it's in a money market account at this point because we've saw the rates on those increase rather dramatically over the last couple of years. However, we've also seen individuals that really took to heart conventional wisdom, saved as much as they possibly could in their retirement accounts through their employers, and have very little in outside savings. So we might say maybe we do generate a little extra cash inside of David's 401k just as a buffer. We know it's going to be taxable if we have to take the money out. However, we do know it's there, not subject to any market risk. And so that might be a way for David to balance himself out a little bit as he heads towards retirement.
But generally for the remaining cash, whatever cash isn't part of that income, we'll call it outer vault, we certainly would not pull that money from the stock market because, as we've said many times, you very well could be in a situation where you're retired for longer than you were working.
Which will be fabulous.
Right. I mean, it's a crazy concept to think of, but when, we start looking at some of the clients that, we've...
Over the years.
Oh, my goodness.
It's remarkable, and it's great because it really does give you the hope that you're not working your entire life just for a few years of retirement. You realistically could be retired for 30 plus years, which...
Funny story, I was sitting into a meeting with your dad, and client had been with us for decades, and
decades.
We were going over some of his paperwork, and on one document, it's like, oh, we started this when you were a young man, and it was early 60s at the time, and now he's in his early 90s. We started this when you were a young man. I just got a kick out of that. And it just goes to show, this gentleman was retired for 30 years and, his income plan was just moving right along. It was really, when you started to unpack it, it was wild to watch, how all the moving parts fit together.
Let's tell David a little bit about how we would put all of the parts together for him. We're going to be general because, again, just a quick question about, how should I configure my 401k heading into retirement? But I think we can give him a little bit more reassurance as to why we wouldn't move all to cash prior to retirement. The other thing is that mechanically we know that when you roll money out of your 401k and move it into an IRA or a self-directed IRA, it's going to go to cash and then move over. So that's going to happen naturally. However, we'd like to stay invested as long as possible because the ultimate goal here is it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. So staying consistently invested is going to give us our best opportunity for returns. So when David
comes in for the game plan, at that point we're going to determine how much monthly income David's going to require, if any, from his retirement and non-retirement assets every year to make sure that the lifestyle that he's living the day before retirement is the one he's going to be living after retirement. So we don't want to change a thing about what David's doing. We just want to fund to what he's already doing.
Exactly, and we have found the most effective way to ensure that you can maintain the lifestyle that you want is finding out if we can fund to your spending, as opposed to looking at 80% of your income or using another calculation like getting to a certain number saved in your retirement accounts. If we treat your home operations like business operations, how much does it cost to run this business, which is your life? If we know that we can comfortably fund to that number using not just your saved retirement investments, your after-tax investments, but also using the power of if you have Social Security, if you have access to pension, if you have other guaranteed income, for example, if you own rental properties, we're talking a lot about real estate, do we have any other fixed income sources that are going to generate income for you in retirement once that monthly paycheck is gone?
And, this is a great point about, we're not just going to pick an arbitrary number because everyone's number is different because everybody's spending and lifestyle is different.
Sure, everyone's got a different size life.
Exactly.
And so we're going to discuss with him in conjunction with building that cash flow game plan, what are the options you have in claiming Social Security and how do they fit into that plan? Now, depending upon if David's single or married, we're going to have a few different options to consider.
Do we hold off to create a larger potential survivor benefit? Do we claim now and turn that faucet on now to take pressure off his retirement assets and retire? I mean,
how old is David? Is he even eligible for Social Security yet?
Is he going to retire from what he does now and maybe do some consulting or maybe get a part-time or even a full-time like this? Is there tread left on the tires? Are you going to continue to work?
Is he going to be part of that gig economy?
Right.
Going to have to start reporting his $600 transactions.
That decision isn't made in a vacuum. There's a lot of moving parts there, but it's an important piece, maybe even a paramount piece of your retirement game plan, and certainly one that we're going to take a very, very hard look at as to how we manage that faucet.
Another important lever that we're going to pull is what is the game plan for health insurance, both before Medicare eligibility and once we get there.
Very, very true. I mean, are we having to go to the marketplace? Is there an interregnum between your retirement and coming on to Medicare? Are we going to have to go onto the marketplace to bridge that gap? Are we going to take advantage of COBRA?
Do you happen to have retiree benefits?
Right. Are certain benefits going to be made available to you after your retirement? After you retire, we've seen that before. So, again, that's another lot of moving parts, although not as many as with Social Security, but it's certainly something that you have to put eyes on, have to have a stratagem for.
And then the final one is, what capital in cash are we going to need to hold for emergencies, which we already talked about, which is that 6 to 12 months, depending upon your level of comfort of cash flow needs. And then secondly, fun and consumption. Do you have any planned consumption events coming up? Those can be home repairs, new car, larger vacations. It could also include things like paying down or liquidating debt, if those are some of your early goals in retirement, or some of your early goals before we get to retirement. So I'm sure everyone can tell that each of these questions brings up additional questions. And that's really what a coaching is for. What we're going to do is, in advance of your visit, you'll fill out a questionnaire that gets to the heart of a lot of these questions. It's really your pedigree information. How old are you? What does your family look like? Are you married? Do you have children? When are you planning to retire? When's your spouse planning to retire if you have one? What are your expenses? What is your income? And then, what do you have in assets behind those things so that we can structure a cash flow game plan for you and
a long-term cash flow game plan. Because
exactly.
like we said, you may be retired for 25 years. You could be retired for 35 years. We need to put together a game plan that's going to see you through the many decades of, hopefully, a very enjoyable retirement.
That's absolutely right.
And we certainly don't want to abandon the market because, it was the power of the market that built your nest egg to be able to enjoy decades of retirement. So we want to keep you invested in a way that meets your risk tolerances and goals and doesn't get too far out in front of the parade, but we still have to be part of the march, if that makes sense.
I liked that analogy. You're getting pretty good. It's like my dad is just rubbing off on you. Well,
I mean, it's hard to be exposed to Jeffy for every day and not have. Just it's the. How does that saying go? The wagon of junk, and you fall behind. You wagon of gold, piece of gold falls. Oh, look at this.
That's right. One of my dad. My dad likes to take the opportunities when I'm not around to tell Aaron's story. So I guess we'll have to tell a quick dad story, which is this is the overarching, I think, parenting strategy my dad used on my sister and I as children, which was when he was in business with my grandfather, they would listen to these tapes, cassette tapes in the car. So I don't even think they put tape players in cars. I don't even think they put CD players in cars anymore. I can just tell you,
as a child of the 80s, if you had a tape deck in your car, that was like, because the technology that had been prior was they were big, giant, like 8-track cassettes that went in, and that was like...
and now they turned into little sleek...
Right, that was like the CDs of the 80s. Like if you had something that you could just push in, and then you had that button, like you didn't have to take the tape out and flip it over.
Right, it just flipped over to the B-side for you.
And the Walkman, like that was the whole... Like that was the iPod of the 80s.
So, I think this was in the early 80s. Listening to these tapes, and I can't remember the gentleman that came up with this thought experiment, which is, if you're following, you have two options in life. You can follow the wagon of junk, or you can follow the wagon of gold. Nothing that you follow when you follow behind the wagon of junk, only junk falls off the wagon of junk. Now, behind the wagon of gold, maybe not very often, but the only thing that can fall off the wagon of gold is gold. So it's all about choices.
Absolutely. It's like one of those, you are the sum total of the 5 people that you interact with the most. It's something along those lines. It just makes sense. And, when Jeff explains this, it's like, of course, you're following a wagon of junk. What did you think was going to fall? Like, I go right into my New York upbringing. Of course that was going to be the case. It was junk.
It was junk from the start. But you know what's not junk from the start? Hanging on until after these messages, because we will be right back.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money.
It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS.
Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Welcome back to Straight Talk on Retirement.
You're live and local.
That's right. St. Louis is favorite. We're waiting for some call-ins. We're waiting for some text messages. 314-931-5877 or 84126 on the text line.
We always want to talk about what's on our mind, but what's more important is what's on yours.
That's right. Now we have a great Rockstar of the Week segment this week because Bill, who came in to see us, and Robbie will give us a little bit more, but he works for a major fast food, or a large fast food chain in St. Louis. It's not one of the most popular ones. However, I think it is the best kept secret in the fast food industry, not because of the food.
Are you saying it's not the food?
It's not the food. It is their retirement plan. It's incredible. We've worked with numerous people that have left this particular chain. They have the little burgers in the boxes. You can get a Crave case of them. We're not allowed to use the corporate names on the radio, but you all know who we're talking about. We've worked with many individuals that have retired from this company, and they had one of the best retirement plans, I think, in all of corporate America.
They were the ones that were funding it, even if you weren't.
That's correct. They had a non-contributory retirement plan, which was fabulous for many of our clients. And let's find out if for Bill, who's 64, if it was fabulous for him too.
Let's talk a little bit about Bill and Hillary.
In honor of election season, we're gonna take a creative tone to our Rock Star of the Week segment, but that's as far as the politics will go today.
Okay. Bill is 64. He's an executive working for a fast food chain, the aforementioned, we'll call them belly bombers. His wife, Hillary, works for one of the major airlines. Bill, they're both 64. She enjoys her job and wants to continue to work until 65 when they are both eligible for Medicare. He would like to leave today. Can he do it?
That was their question. And I think it was really, Bill was pretty excited, like he's ready to go no matter what. I think we were really there to give Hillary a little bit of reassurance that they could do it.
Basically had two major questions. Does the money work? What about our health care?
Great questions.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to.
Why, thank you, sir. Such kindness. My goodness. So first, let's do a few scenarios. Let's use scenario one. They're both retired, and we're going to wait until their normal retirement age before taking Social Security. This example is a little easier in terms of the math that we'll use on the radio because Bill and Hillary are both the same age. So we can line this up really nicely. They're both 64 years old. So we have a 2-year gap in terms of Social Security. And even though Hillary said she'd like to continue to work, we're going to retire her right now. Let's just see if the math works.
Well, just give a little background. Bill's 401k has $1.8 million in it. Hillary's 401k has $630,000. They have $110,000 in investment accounts, $62,000 in money market accounts. So their total asset base is $2.5 million. That excludes their vault.
So perfect. And we always want to leave the vault out of the conversation of investable assets because we intentionally put your safe money to the side with the intent of not having it invested to make your monthly income work. We want to make sure that you have a little bit of excess for those unintended emergencies that come up. I mean, most emergencies are unintended, I guess. So that way we're not upsetting your cash flow. So between Bill and Hillary, we talked to them a little bit, and they determined that they're spending about $8,000 a month, and that's after tax. So in retirement, we have to incorporate taxes back in again. So
we scaled that back up by 20%, $8,000 scaled up by 20%. That leaves us with a monthly income need of $9,600.
And between Bill and Hillary, their Social Security benefits, when they reach 66 years old, are going to be about $5,400 a month. So if we subtract $5,400 from $9,600, which is how much they need every month, they're short about $4,200 a month.
And we know we have to scale that up over a year, and that leaves us with a grand total of $50,400.
So we know that if we'd like to use a prudent rate of withdrawal, so we would like to live off of the interest and the earnings of our investments. We don't want to deplete the capital. The goal is to stay at a consistent 4% rate of withdrawal. So if we take the $50,400 and divide it by 4%, or multiply it by 25 if you're doing the math at home, we need about $1.2 million.
Which is great because they have about double that.
That's fabulous. So that means that when all the faucets are on, both Social Security is on for Bill and Hillary, that's what things will look like. However,
what if we wait to turn on Social Security?
So
what if we waited 3 years to turn on until they're both 67?
Well, that was the scenario. We're waiting until their normal retirement age to turn on the faucets, right? So that means that there's going to be a deficit between if they retire
when they
today,
retire and when they turn on that Social Security faucet.
Exactly. So they'll need about $115,000 for 3 years, right? Because they need $8,000 a month over a 12-month period times 12. So that times 3. So that means they need about $345,000 of assets. Essentially, what we're doing is we're saying let's replace all of their income need if they are both retired versus using Social Security
as a buffer
to help offset some of that. They'd like to let that benefit grow, so they're going to rely on their assets for a few years to do so. That means they need about $345,000 of assets. And
we have to pile that onto their into the milk money need, as your dad would call it, and that leaves us with a grand total of $1.4 million that they will need, which is still within that acceptable range given their asset base of $2.5 million.
Exactly. So that wasn't really what they came in asking, though, right? They came in asking, Hillary wants to keep working, Bill wants to retire today. How do we make this money work? We like to put that first example on the board because I think it's the most extreme. There's no income coming in.
Right.
We're waiting for Social Security. We're going to rely on your assets. It's pretty nice to know that that's an option available to you because I think it gives you every other option. And
just as an aside, I love it when we have multiple, we'll call it multiple roads to the same place. Like, do we turn these things on now? This is what it looks like if we wait. This is what it looks like if maybe one of you turns on Social Security and the other continues to work. There's a lot of options to get to the same place. And
maybe, and our hope is that you get to make this decision based on time, based on feeling, based on our decisions together, which scenario you're going to use. However, there may be situations where you're forced into a scenario after we've already picked a course. So it's nice to know what each road like, even if we don't necessarily intend to walk down it. If things change and we need to take advantage of one of these scenarios, it's really nice to know what that road is going to look like ahead. So let's go to scenario number 2, which is more in line with exactly what Bill and Hillary would like to do.
Scenario number 2, Bill takes his Social Security today, so we know that they're going to need $8,000. We scale that up for taxes. That leaves us with a grand total of $9,600 a month. Hillary's income, because she's going to continue to work, is $3,000 a month. Bill has turned on his Social Security. He's going to be receiving $2,600 a month. So
that's a little bit lower than the $3,000 he would receive if he waited.
Correct.
So we're using the lower number.
So between Hillary's income and Bill's Social Security, that leaves them with a $5,600 a month income. So they're about $4,000 short, and we know we have to scale that up over the full year, which leaves us with a total of $48,000. We have to divide that by 4%, and that leaves us with the milk money of $1.2 million, which is still great because they are still well below their asset base of $2.5 million.
Yeah, they're really at less than a 2% rate of withdrawal. As when Hillary continues to work, if we turn Bill's Social Security on at $2,600 a month, that leaves them only with a $4,000 a month deficit, which can be covered by about $1.2 million of assets. Not only do they have double that, but we know that Hillary's going to continue to work. So she'll be continuing to add to her retirement account as Bill is enjoying golf, gambling, gardening, all the grandchildren, all of the G's of retirement.
Yeah, I was just saying golf, gambling, and gardening?
Gardening, grandchildren, and I can't think, there's a few others. They call them the G's of retirement.
Is that where you get bad beated at the casino? You come home and dig a hole in the garden? You just start digging like, your pocket aces got wrecked and now you're in the backyard. That's terrible.
Oh, that is terrible.
No, this is a great example showing the different roads to get, again, to the same place. When to turn things on, how to manage the things that you're turning on. Mm-hmm. Very, very important, especially when it comes to Social Security, because in some cases, in many cases, that could be the largest, most valuable fixed income asset that you have.
Certainly. And it's also important not only in your lifetime if you happen to be married, but it is an important component of estate planning, because when we are planning for when one spouse is no longer with us, it's important to make sure that we can maintain the lifestyle of the surviving spouse. So in many instances, we are running the numbers of what will one spouse lose if they not just lose their spouse, what income will also be lost in that scenario. The one question that we didn't get to, which I think is a relatively easy answer for Bill and Hillary at this moment, is what do they do about health care when Bill retires? So if Bill decides to retire before Hillary's going to continue to work. Bill will have the opportunity to leave his employer plan and jump onto Hillary's as a spouse. And that'll be what's called a qualifying event, because Bill will lose his insurance through retirement. That'll give him access to his wife Hillary's coverage. She'll be able to add him. And then what we'll do is when Hillary retires, we'll be able to enroll Bill and Hillary at the same time in Medicare. They won't have to use any additional bridges to get there. In most cases, we were talking about two relatively large employers as opposed to Bill jumping off his own plan and utilizing Medicare. In a lot of instances, it does make sense for the spouse that continues to work to add them to their coverage, because your premiums through your employer are pre-tax, which means you're not going to pay taxes on those premiums, which automatically can reduce their cost from anywhere from 12 to 30%, depending upon what your tax bracket is.
Relatively easy fix, being that Hillary is going to continue to work.
Yes.
But there certainly would have been options if they both retired at the same time and we had to bridge that gap. Be it through COBRA or a marketplace solution.
Right, and since they were 64, we were looking at a relatively short time frame, meaning we would, like you said, Rob, look at COBRA or the Affordable Care Act, so private coverage, to bridge from 64 to 65, and then they'd both jump onto Medicare respectively.
But being that Hillary is going to be a real trooper and continue to work, the solution just presented itself.
It's fabulous. Now, we do have a few text questions to get to, but I think we should take our second break of the hour.
Why don't we? So don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more Straight Talk on Retirement after these messages.
Now, back to Straight Talk on Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Welcome back to our last segment of the first hour of Straight Talk on Retirement. Don't forget, if you happen to be a newer listener, we have an entire second hour coming up at 10 o'clock, and we always like to kick hour number 2 off with our Smart Choices About Your Healthcare segment. Great news for everyone this morning. We will have Frank Ellis, our Medicare coach, in the house with us this week, so that means if you've been waiting to ask a Medicare question, if you have one on your mind, text it in now. We will have them all keyed up for when Frank gets here. He does have a great topic to discuss, a little comparison between HMOs and PPOs. So if you have questions about that, get them ready to go. He'll be here to answer them for you. But let's answer a few questions that we already have.
Absolutely. And next texter writes, good morning. Is there a rule of thumb for which faucet to turn on in retirement? Taxable versus Roth account?
This is a great question, and we had a pretty extensive discussion about this, I believe, last week on the show. So I don't believe that show's been posted to our website yet, only because they must go through compliance before they're posted. However, I would just make a note of last Saturday, what was the date on that? The 11th or the 12th, I think. So August 10th, I apologize. I'd make a note there. But let's quickly just have a chat about this, which is we find that for most of our clients in retirement, we are using their retirement assets, so the taxable accounts, to make up the basis of their monthly income needs. In the alternative, we're finding that many clients are using their Roth accounts for major consumption.
The Roth account is almost as if it's a vault, a double vault. Like you have your money market account or your checking account that you keep a certain amount of money, but then you have that backup vault known as Roth.
Right, and they are very different in the sense that generally Roth accounts are invested. And with us, they absolutely are invested, but good point, which is that people are usually holding those back to use for larger consumption events. Because what we find in retirement is that almost every individual is paying less in taxes in retirement than they were while they were working. And the reason for that is we are funding to your net after-tax spending. Most people only receive about 60% of their paycheck. So even when we increase your net amount by taxes, you are still dropping your gross income by sometimes over 20%. The other piece that people don't consider in retirement is that Social Security is not fully taxable.
You know, I was just about to tell you how, as I think about faucets, I think about Social Security being there's that 15% sliver that's tax-free. So the most you can be taxed is on 85% of it.
At your tax rate, yep.
So when we work backwards from that, the next one being your traditional retirement accounts.
Because that's ordinary income, you're going to pay taxes on
As
that.
you begin to take those distributions, you'll either have to withhold taxes or be taxed at the end of the year.
Right.
So, and then we get to Roth, which is completely tax-free, and that's why a lot of our clients seem to hold those back for those bigger purchases that you mentioned.
It also gives us, just a caveat, Roth is tax-free as long as you've had the account for 5 years, you're over 59 and a half. Just for compliance.
Right.
But the other reason that we like to hold those Roth assets back is because it helps us moderate your tax bracket over time. If we already know that we're building a we'll call it tax-preferred income for you, it's already going to be less than your gross wages were while you were working. You have Social Security, which has some tax preference. And now for Missouri and always for Illinois, or as long as I can remember, I won't say always, Social Security is not taxable at the state level. So that gives additional preference to those dollars, especially in Missouri. In Illinois, distributions from your retirement accounts are not taxable, which makes those tax preferred for if you happen to live on the other side of the river. So the really cool thing here is that we know if you're dropping tax brackets naturally as you retire, let's start utilizing some of those taxable dollars because you're in the 10, 12, maybe 15% tax bracket. That's not so bad. However, when it's time for a large purchase, you want to do a big remodel on the house, the car that is basically the cost of a house now that you have to purchase, that's going to bump you into a much higher bracket.
And we don't want that.
No, not necessarily. Certainly not if we have the opportunity to moderate it. So maybe we're not pulling 100% from the Roth, but what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we know your base income is, let's say it's $75,000. We know that we have another $14,000 of room before you get to $89,000, which is the married filing jointly threshold for the 12% bracket. So that means we have $14,000 that we might pull from another taxable account, and then the rest is going to come from Roth, so we can keep you in that low bracket for an extended period of time. So we would first, we definitely recommend sitting down with a professional to help you design your game plan. But then secondly, we'd say our general leaning is towards the pre-tax dollars to start utilizing those. And it's important to start utilizing them over time because eventually you are going to have to pull from them when you get to required minimum distribution age. And with that, everyone, we've got more text questions on deck.
We won't forget about you.
We certainly won't forget about you. We've got Frank on the way, so don't touch that dial. We will be right back with some more Straight Talk on retirement after the news. So key up those text questions, 84126 on the text line. We'll be back.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money.
It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS.
Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Welcome back to Straight Talk on Retirement, hour number 2. We're going to kick this hour off with our smart choices about your healthcare segment. But for everyone that's texted in about selling a house, unit investment trust, taxes, we're getting right back to you after we get to Frank. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, listeners.
Thanks for being here this morning. We already have text questions keyed up for you, but let's talk about Harvey first.
Yeah, so today we are going to be doing a little segment on kind of like the difference between the HMO and the PPO. And what brought me to discuss these options here today was Harvey, one of our clients, had a situation. So Harvey recently turned 65 back in May, but he did not know if he was ready to retire or not. Just like most people,
Sure.
Maybe they want to retire, maybe they want to keep working and stay on that employer's coverage, which you can do so with 20 or more employees. 20 or less employees, turn 65, you have to come on to Medicare.
Right.
So Harvey's company had more than 20 or more employees, so he could technically continue to work and keep that insurance coverage. But like most people, he turned 65 and he's, pretty much ready to walk out the door any minute now.
Okay.
So Harvey decided that he would go ahead and retire in August. So August 31st. August has 31 days, correct?
Yep.
Not 30. Okay, so August 31st would be his last day of coverage under his employer's coverage. And then he would come on to Medicare for September 1st using what's called his initial enrollment period. So for folks that have been listening to us for a while now, we know that initial enrollment period is the enrollment period 3 months before your birth month of turning 65, the birth month or your birth month,
right,
whenever you turn 65, and then 3 months after you turn 65. So it's a 7-month window revolved around his 65th birth month, his 65th birthday, to where he can come on to Medicare and pick any plan that he wants.
And we've talked about this a lot. Medicare has a lot of different enrollment periods. Frank is here to make sure that you choose the right one. There is a hierarchy, and luckily Harvey's initial election is always the first one. It's always the primary enrollment period. So even though Harvey's retiring, he's losing his employer coverage, he's still going to utilize his initial election period.
That's right. So he gets the 3 months after May, because he turned 65 in May. And so August would be his last month, and then he can still use his initial enrollment period to enroll for a September 1st effective date.
Perfect.
So it's kind of like you're rolling into that 4th month, but you're enrolling inside of your 3rd month into that 4th month.
Right. So you can push it out essentially one additional month, but that's not an eligible enrollment period. That's an effective date.
That's an effective date. That's correct.
Different.
So Harvey, he says he listens to the show, and, we talk about HMOs and PPOs a lot. And he has a standard insurance plan like most people with their company. They have probably a PPO. They probably have had some experience with an HMO in the past, but as they've continued to work and these insurance companies put out more and more plans, company-sponsored plans typically go with your PPO options.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, Harvey being 65, he probably experienced the creation of the HMO, the evolution of the HMO, and then the reversion back to the PPO, where most employer plans have done that at this point. And when we're talking HMO and PPO, we're really focused on the Medicare Advantage side of the Medicare market, right?
That's right. So Harvey, since he's done the research, he kind of knew he wanted something that worked a little bit like his employer's coverage. So that would be that Medicare Advantage, PPO sort of style plan.
So you guys had to get into the weeds of what type of Medicare Advantage plan is going to work best.
That's right, because there are two different options when it comes to these Medicare Advantage plans. Typically, the insurance companies offer both options. So we're talking like, if you have an Aetna or a United Healthcare or a Humana or an Essence, they will offer an HMO plan or a PPO plan.
And that's new for Essence, right? They didn't always offer the PPO, so now it really seems like the entire market has moved towards giving the consumers more options as to how they want to access their Medicare Advantage plans.
That's right. They're leveling the playing field, and they're bringing out more and more of these plans for competition with these other insurance companies. So it's actually great. Fair play.
Awesome.
So Harvey and I sat down and we went over the details of the HMO and the PPO. What's going to be best? Why would someone come on to an HMO as opposed to a PPO? And kind of what are we gaining or what are we losing by going with either or plan?
Okay.
So to start, an HMO just stands for Health Maintenance Organizations. These plans have been around for years, like Aaron just said, and they have evolved. So most HMO plans back when required referrals. So a referral was you go to your doctor and he says, okay, well, it looks like you're having some heart palpitations. You may want to see a cardiologist. I'm going to request that you go to this cardiologist over here and see him. Mm-hmm. And then you go to that cardiologist 3 months down the road and he tells you, okay, you're fine. Come back and see me whenever you have a heart attack. So that's what an example of a referral would be.
Got you.
Now, hopefully that never happened to anyone, of course, but that's just an example.
Certainly, and people found them to be a little bit cumbersome because, one, you had to go to the primary. Maybe you had a copay at the primary. Then you had to take a piece of paper. We were talking about cassette tapes earlier, so this is like our throwback episode. You had to take a piece of paper and walk it from the primary care doctor to the specialist in order to even get that appointment that wouldn't be for 3 months down the road. And like you said, Frank, usually it was that primary care doctor that was picking the specialist. Most likely they were picking them because there were only 5 other options inside of these tiny HMOs.
That's right.
But that was, I don't want to date myself, but I mean, that was like 30 years ago at this point. So things have started to evolve because just like everything else, healthcare really is a consumer-driven market in many cases. And as the consumers wanted more choice, as the consumers wanted more freedom, the insurance companies had to start leaning that direction.
That's right. That's right. So these referrals are no longer required on most HMO plans. Not all HMO plans, but most HMO plans do not require the referrals now. So that means you no longer have to, take the piece of paper to the specialist or go inside of the computer or wait for your doctor to request someone. That means if you notice that you're having a heart palpitation or something, you can find any doctor that's in network that you want to go to. So, for instance, if you had United Healthcare, a United Healthcare doctor, or Aetna, an Aetna doctor, and you can go see those doctors without having a referral and taking that extra step. And it really has taken a lot of headache out of the ball game whenever it comes to these HMO plans.
Certainly. It gives a primary care doctor's office a little bit more administrative time to do the things they need that aren't just referral creation. Also gives you more flexibility to choose those individuals. But for many people, we found that it's really a scheduling thing, which is if you were having some heart issues, you went to your primary care doctor, or they noticed that during your visit, most likely you're taking the advice of your doctor and like, oh, you recommend Dr. Brown, I'll go see him. So most people were doing parts of the process already, but that final step could become a little bit arduous because if the primary didn't send the referral, you couldn't see that doctor until you had the referral. Now, many of the companies, like you said, Frank, have alleviated this referral process, meaning you can get the customary referral from the doctor, meaning he asks that you go see someone because now you've fallen outside of his scope, or you would just like to go see the dermatologist. You don't want to talk to the primary about it first. As long as they're in network, you don't need any other steps. So it really feels like a PPO, but there's a few restrictions.
That's right. That's right. So, and we know in terms of the PPO that the PPO does not require referrals. So you have HMOs on one side that are not offering referrals, and the PPO, on the other hand, not offering referrals. So depending on what insurance company you go with, an HMO, a win-win in that situation. So let's look at some other differences between them.
So tell me a little bit. So let's talk about what I would see, because we can take the referral piece off the table as a major difference.
We can wash it.
Yeah, let's call that a wash. What would you say the differentiating factor between an HMO and a PPO is?
So the biggest thing that people notice right up the front is going to be what we call the max out-of-pocket with these plans. So our maximum out-of-pocket, every Medicare Advantage plan has a stopping point, and that's just called your maximum out-of-pocket. So keep in mind, these plans, they do run on a calendar year. So you're going from, no matter whenever you join the plan, you're still on a calendar year. You're running from January 1st to December 31st.
So they don't prorate your maximum out-of-pocket. So if you had a $3,000 maximum out-of-pocket, if you start in January or June, it's still $3,000.
That's right. That's right. So your HMOs, those are going to have less max out-of-pockets than your PPO plans.
So average HMO is around $3,000, right?
Average HMO is around $3,000. Average PPO is going to be about $5,000 max out-of-pocket.
So with the ability to have more choice, because the PPOs tend to have slightly larger networks, I would say about 20% larger than the HMO, you get a little bit more choice, more expensive, but PPOs also have out-of-network benefits, right?
That's correct. So that brings us to the other thing is the networks. So that's excellent there, Aaron. The HMO really is an in-network plan only. So while you can go see any doctor that you want, they have to be in-network. Okay?
Got you.
You can't go see an out-of-network doctor. Otherwise, you're paying 100% of that bill.
Got you.
The PPO plan gives you a little bit more flexibility for healthcare. You get more doctors because you can use that plan in or out of network. So if your doctor doesn't accept the plan, you can still use that plan, and you will pay what's called a co-insurance.
So instead of paying that copay, let's say on this hypothetical PPO, the copay for a specialist is $45. If you choose an in-network specialist, you pay $45. Mm-hmm. If you choose an out-of-network specialist, you pay a percentage of what the Medicare contracted rate is.
That's correct. So typically that percentage is going to be somewhere of about 30 to 40% that the enrollee would pay. So the plan would pick up 60 to 70%.
So you still have coverage. It's just that, one, you're going to pay a little bit more because most likely 30 to 40% is more than a copay amount. And then secondly, it's going to be variable, which means you don't you could clearly define your copays on the in-network benefits. On the out-of-network, it's going to be a percentage, so it will vary.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
All right.
The other portion of this is that your HMOs, again, they have no max out of or low max out of pocket than the PPO. Then they do not have any deductibles. As of right now, 2024, again, 2025, it may look a little different, but as of right now, the HMO plans do not have a deductible.
And what that means for everyone is day one, you join the policy. My joke is, let's say you've joined in January and you have a little too much fun on New Year's. January 1st, you are in the insurance company's pocket. If you're using an HMO, you get the benefit of whatever the price structure is, whatever those managed care benefits are. So you have to see a specialist, $45. You need the x-ray, no cost to you. If you have a deductible, you have to pay out of your own pocket first before the insurance company will come in and give you those defined benefits. So if you had the PPO and you had a little bit too much fun on New Year's and you need an x-ray, maybe you have to pay a little bit for it. Now, you want to have a conversation with someone like Frank as to what is subject to the deductible versus what is not subject to the deductible. Because for some people, you're going to spend the money anyway. For example, I know that the Aetna plans, it's all in-hospital care is what goes towards their PPO deductible, right?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
So that means if you're admitted to the hospital, you're either going to pay a copay dollar amount that probably equals about $1,000, or you're going to pay a $1,000 deductible. It's really language. You're still out of pocket the same money.
Right. You're still going to be out of pocket that same money. The PPOs, they do have, some of them, not all of them, some of them do have deductibles.
Sure.
And again, in that situation, you're probably paying the deductible for something like an emergency, so inpatient hospital, outpatient hospital, something like a radiology service, so MRI or CT scan. You go see your specialist or something like that, you get some lab work done, you're not paying that deductible.
Right. So you just want to be clear, because sometimes that could sound like a drawback when really it's not too much of a stumbling block. So just as a quick review, if we're talking about the differences between HMO and PPO, no referrals on either. So that's really not a difference anymore. For most HMOs, no referrals.
Correct.
So we can generally call that a wash. You have in-network benefits only with the HMOs, in and out of network with the PPOs. Lower max out-of-pockets with the HMOs, higher with the PPOs. Do you have any other points of comparison before you tell us how Harvey made his decision?
And the only other thing that I would add to that is the co-insurance portion of the PPO, because oftentimes people will come to me and they will say, Frank, with this PPO, I'm probably never going to go out of network, but in the case that I do have to go out of network, how much more is my bill going to be? And again, most plans are going to cover you 60 to 70% for out-of-network usage on a PPO, and you're going to pay that 30 or 40% of the bill.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly before we get back to what Harvey decided is when we're talking about in- and out-of-network benefits, a lot of the national carriers now, like United and Excellent. So United and Aetna have some other options, right?
Yeah. So I guess the only other piece that I wanted to add to that was the extra benefits portion.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So the extra benefits on an HMO are greater than the extra benefits on the PPO. So we're talking your dental, your vision, your hearing, gym membership, and other your fitness allowance, copay cards, other benefits that you get in these HMO plans. That yes, you do get them in the PPO plans, but the limits of the PPO are less than they are on the HMO plan.
So you have the opportunity to get a little bit more money back from the insurance company by utilizing extra benefits in the HMOs versus the PPOs. They still have those benefits, but they've just cut back those benefit dollar amounts from what you could access on a HMO.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So we're looking at HMO, lower max out of pocket, no referrals.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stay in network, but as you mentioned, these networks are so large now.
Mm-hmm.
And then no co-insurance, but of course that's another kind of wash. And then, of course, your extra benefits, more extra benefits on that HMO.
And on the network side of things, especially with the national networks at this point, if you're traveling and you find a doctor, you're using an HMO and you're traveling, but you find a doctor that's in network with your insurance carrier, that's still considered in network, right?
That is correct. So those HMO plans, they now have what's called national network, again, depending on what insurance company you go with.
Right. So you want to confirm these benefits. These are just examples of what is available out there.
That is correct. That is correct. So with Harvey, kind of what we decided for him, because his insurance plan, again, was a PPO plan. And those insurance employee-sponsored PPO plans, they look a lot similar to the Advantage plans, except for a couple of key areas. One of the biggest key areas is that your employer's plan is probably going to have a monthly premium.
And yours most likely doesn't.
Exactly. Yours is most likely going to be free.
Awesome.
Unless you got to pay that deductible first. But again, that's going to be rare with these plans. Okay. So Harvey was paying $250 a month just to have his PPO plan.
Got you.
So now we know Medicare is going to be $174.70.
Got you, because you still have to pay your Part B is what that $174.70 represents.
That is correct. He still has to pay Medicare. And he has to have A and B to get the Medicare Advantage plan.
Got you.
Okay? But again, the Advantage plan is going to be $0 free.
Cool.
So he had a $5,000 deductible.
Oh, my gosh.
So again, that deductible is what you pay first before the insurance policy picks up. On the Medicare Advantage plan, let's just say, 9 out of 10 plans don't have a deductible. So we're going to say we're choosing one without a deductible.
So we can lower premium. We can cut deductible.
Cut the deductible straight away. His maximum out-of-pocket on his plan, so he has a deductible, and these are exactly how most employers' plans are. You have a deductible, you have copays that you have to pay, and then you still have a maximum out-of-pocket that you potentially have to meet.
Got you. So you still have some coverage.
Mm-hmm. So his max was $7,500, okay? And now he's cutting that because we decided that we were going to do the HMO plan for Harvey. He's going to try the HMO plan this year. And if there's any changes that needs to be made, then we'll do them during the open enrollment period time from October through December.
So that's, and I'm sure, and I used to recommend this a lot. You ask Harvey, you're signing up for this HMO in September. Use the plan.
Use those benefits.
Try it out so we can find out if you don't like the HMO, because you're only going to have to be on this plan until December. You theoretically could switch in January.
That's right.
To a plan in January, but you won't know if you don't like it unless you actually use it.
That's right. Use those benefits. I have folks that even come on in December, and I tell them the same thing.
Just try it out.
Use every last bit of those benefits, because it's not going to roll over for you. It'll start over, but it won't roll over for you.
Oh, right. Absolutely. Like, take advantage of the extra benefits if you have 1 month or all 12, and then also try going to the doctor. We're not recommending you go unnecessarily, but maybe have an appointment scheduled so you can utilize your benefits, see how you like the process. If you're like, this HMO thing's not working, you have an ability to make a change, but only during certain times of the year. So make sure that you're, setting yourself up for success.
Then, so his max dropped from $7,500 to $2,400 essentially.
Oh my gosh!
So now he gets the luxury of a lower monthly premium. He gets the luxury of not having a deductible. So the first time he goes to the doctor, September 1st, anything he pays for is going straight to that max out of pocket right away.
Got ya.
Then he also gets the luxury of a way lower max out of pocket. So his liability under his employer's coverage $7,500. So God forbid something happened between here and now to where he would have to use that and maximize that. He'd be out $7,500 as opposed to $2,400 starting September.
The thing I also really like is most likely Harvey's not going to feel any different on this plan than on his employer's plan, because he can go to the doctor, he can see a specialist, he doesn't need referrals, he's going to have a little bit more money in his pocket, he's going to know he'll have a little bit less to outlay if something serious happens. He gets access to extra benefits we know he didn't have on the employer plan.
That's right.
And I like that it's going to be one of those transitions where we always talk about on the financial side having the same lifestyle the day before as the day after. This is like the same health insurance the day before as the day after, except for we threw in a little extra kickers for him.
Threw in a lot of extra kickers for him. That's right.
That's awesome. So before we get to our first phone call, we do have a text. Frank, are pool tables included in the Aetna's fitness reimbursement plan?
I absolutely love that question. I'm going to say no, that they are not covered, but that's a cool idea. Maybe next year.
What about yard games? Yards, or I guess yards, or a kayak?
Kayak is. So I do have a client that they got a kayak covered. Yard games, that's questionable. I would submit those yard games and take a shot on it.
And then tell us what happened. Like, if you were going to buy now we're not asking you to buy something you wouldn't have already purchased, but if you already purchased the yards and you want to submit them to Aetna, tell us if you got approved, because this is, like Frank said, this is a new benefit. We got to see what happens. We need to see what happens.
Yeah, we need to see what happens. Someone order a slip and slide for the office, and I'll submit it in for you and let you know if it
goes through?
if it goes through. Yeah.
I gotta ask. Well, what is a yard?
So, haven't you ever played yard darts before? Like, they're these humongous darts, and you have it's not a board, but you have, like, targets on the ground in the backyard, and you throw them.
Oh,
They're
that sounds
super
fun.
Is that like the bag of beans?
No, man,
No,
these are, like, dangerous.
bags.
You could die. Like, they're, like, actual darts. They're huge darts.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, right? Rob's not from the Midwest, guys.
The education of Robert Markham continues.
Exactly. He's not. He knows what, like, bar darts are, like, in the
Right,
on the wall.
I've seen
Oh,
the
yeah,
yard.
yeah.
What's a yard?
So they are they're banned in some places.
Oh, no kidding. Now it sounds really fun. They're not banned in Missouri, I bet.
Probably not.
Oh, that's nice.
And you know what? We've got Judy on line 1. Sounds like she's got a Medicare question. Good morning, Judy.
Morning, Judy.
Good morning. You guys have forgot me and made me forget my question. This is like in the office. Sounds like a broken bone and an ER visit. So you can see if they pay for that.
Yeah.
We won't let my dad use the slip and slide. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Good idea. Those are banned from my yard. Somebody almost hit a tree. Anyway.
Oh, no.
Oh, not the baby grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's
Maybe
charts.
I put it there on purpose. Okay. So, Frank, remember last year when we were looking at Medicare Advantage plans?
I do.
And we were all ready to sign up for one, and you called me and said, I'm not a representative for that plan. I
That's
can
right.
help you sign up. And I said, I don't want to do that because I need you. Have you had a chance? Have you had a chance to look into becoming a representative for any of those plans so that maybe this year we can look at them again, or other people on the side of the river can look at them again?
Yeah.
I was just wondering.
So we always look into partnering with any insurance company that we can, if it makes sense. And part of the reason was in your area, you're in, I believe, rural Illinois. So
Marion County.
Yeah.
Marion County. Yeah. So most
Williamson.
insurance companies.
Williamson, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Williamson County.
Williamson. Okay. So most insurance companies, like your major ones that are offering all these great benefits, are not contracted down there. They can't agree to the terms and conditions with those hospitals and doctors down there. That's why, like, your Aetna wasn't there, or your standard regular Blue Cross Blue Shield wasn't there. It was like a different form of Anthem that was down there, Anthem, Illinois, which is very, very small, confined networks. So we didn't feel like it was necessary for you to make any changes last year. But of course, we'll absolutely look into that again this year.
And the cool thing is every year the insurance companies start to, they try to expand their network availability. Mm-hmm. So, for a lot of our clients that are down in the Ozarks, they only had access to one insurance company about 5 years ago, and now everybody's there. So it might just take a little time, and this year might be your year. So I know that we're going to do a review for you and for everyone that calls and would like to have a review with us. Mm-hmm. So we'll be here to help you, Judy.
Okay, thank you. Hey,
thank
Frank,
you.
Mermet Springs is still waiting for you.
Get my scuba. Is it scuba diving license?
Yes.
Oh yeah. That'll be fun.
Thanks for calling, Judy.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I guess I got to learn to swim first before I can do that.
Oh, my God.
You don't know how to swim?
No, I know how. I'm kidding. Not very good, though.
Frank going to sink to the bottom? Oh, no.
Not before open enrollment, Frank.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I apologize. It's Jarts. I was pronouncing it incorrectly. I was pronouncing the J as a Y. Yart sounded better like yard darts to me. I digress. Anyway, thank you, Frank, for coming in to see us this morning. For everyone that has a Medicare question or you're getting ready to retire, getting ready to jump onto Medicare, turn 65, don't hold back. Give Frank a call, 314-863-0008, or send him an email, franklin@jblfinancial.com, or go to the website, jblfinancial.com, and say, I would like an appointment with a Medicare coach, and we will get you on Frank's calendar. Thanks for coming in, Frank.
Look forward to hearing from everybody.
All right, we will see you again soon. And everyone, please don't touch that dial. We're going to come back to all of your pre-10 a.m. hour questions as soon as we return.
We haven't forgotten about you, so don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more Straight Talk on Retirement after these messages.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
We're back.
Welcome back to the Big 550 KTRS.
That's right. Let's get to some of those text questions.
Why don't we? And they've been patient, so let's get to them.
Let's do it.
And our next texter writes, can you perhaps give a typical selling a house, buying another of equal or greater value example as it pertains to capital gains?
So if you are buying and selling residential real estate,
primary residence,
your primary also vacation home. So it's not an investment property. It's not a rental property. It's not a piece of commercial real estate. When you sell your home, and I would suggest to the texter to go take a quick look at our newsletter, the August 2024 newsletter, because on the third page inside where it shows the article Thinking of Selling Your Home, it gives an excellent hypothetical example of how the capital gains is going to work. You get the basis of your home, so the one you're selling, is going to be what you paid for it, plus purchase costs, plus improvements, equals basis. If you are married, you get to add $500,000 to that total. So let's just use, for example, let's just say that your home, you purchased it for $200,000 plus costs. You made another $100,000 of improvement. So now you're up to $300,000 of basis. If you're married, if you sell the house for $800,000 or less, there are no capital gains. If you sell the home for $800,000 or over $800,000, you will pay capital gains on the dollars over $800,000. If we use the same example, $200,000 purchase plus cost, $100,000 in repairs, not maintenance, repairs. Yeah, just to be clear for everyone, maintenance doesn't count, unfortunately. I wish that would be nice.
That would be.
Maintenance and moving, that would be cool. Maybe we should propose that. But anyway, okay, so $300,000 is your basis. $200,000 purchase, $100,000 improvements, $300,000 you're single.
So now you get to take advantage of the $250,000 exclusion. So that brings you up to $550,000. So any if you sell the house for any amount above $550, you'll be taxed on that amount. So say you sold it for $650, you're not being charged taxes on the full $650. It's just that $100,000 over your basis of $550.
And if you own the home for more than 1 year, it's long-term capital gains. If you own it for less than a year, it's considered short-term capital gains.
And for those of you out there that might be or will be inheriting a house, great news. You're given a step up in basis. So say mom and dad paid, they bought the house for some pocket lint and some chicken bones, and now it's worth $3 million, and mom and dad, unfortunately, pass away, but they leave you the house. Your cost basis is what the house is worth at the date of their passing.
Fair market, right. So you'll want to. So the process for that is you'll want to get some comps. You'll want to have someone assess the value of the property around the date of your inheritance or when the person passed away. That is your basis in the home. So like Rob just said, if you parents bought the house for $100,000, it's appreciated in value to $300 to $3 million. Your basis is $3 million. Anything you sell it above $3 is going to be capital gains. Anything below, you could consider a capital loss. Even no taxes.
I just like to use the analogy of chicken bones and pocket lint. And then you throw the $5 million. So no matter what that
absolutely
what that bridge is, you're given a step up in basis. So you don't have all that is washed away. And just as an aside, I hope they never get rid of that provision in the tax code.
Hope is not a strategy.
Oh, goodness. Where to begin with that one?
Absolutely. Well, let's begin with our next text.
And our next texter writes, I was sold 2-unit trust. I'm 54, still working, not ready to retire, and have around $600,000 invested in assets. Should I keep these unit trusts? What are they? I don't understand them. Thanks.
So unit investment trusts are just a different type of investment vehicle. The way that I like to think about them is that they live in the world between an individual security and mutual funds. Most unit investment trusts have investment objectives just like a mutual fund would. They're looking for dividends. They're looking for growth. They're looking at tech. Sometimes they can have even more refined investment objectives. For example, campaign for an election year. So maybe they're looking at trying to capture companies that would benefit from campaign dollars being spent. So you can have a very specific type of unit investment trust. The way they work is you'll have an investment objective. The company that you've selected your unit investment trust through will have a lineup anywhere between 36 and 60 securities held inside of that unit investment trust. It's a buy and hold strategy. So what that means is that as opposed to paying investment charges, which are usually called 12B1 fees if you are using a mutual fund, they have what are called creation fees. So you pay a small upfront charge. It's usually about 10 basis points, so 0.1% depending upon what company you're working with. It's a one-time charge to create the investment. If you're holding it outside of a retirement account, so not inside of your IRA or Roth, they generally have 12 to 36-month holding periods, which gives you the opportunity to take advantage of long-term capital gains. They are fully liquid, which means you could sell out prior to that, but they give you the opportunity to hold for a certain length of time, taking advantage of some tax benefits for holding it for a year. Once you've held it for the allotted amount of time, you're going to be given the option to roll it over, meaning they're called series. So roll it to the next series, which means it closely resembles what you were already invested in. You do want to check to make sure because they do have the opportunity to make changes between series as to what's being invested inside of that unit investment trust. You can reinvest it or you can liquidate it to cash. There are no charges for that. There might be taxes involved, though. So my thought would be unit investment trust, not a bad vehicle for investing on the face of it, but you do want to make sure that, one, your portfolio meets your risk tolerance. What's the purpose of this piece of this piece of your portfolio was your advisor, or it sounds like you have an advisor potentially because there's something in your portfolio you don't recognize, so I'm guessing you didn't purchase it yourself. Were they looking to concentrate in a specific sector of the economy? Did they think that we were going to see some nice, for example, maybe this was an AI-driven unit investment trust. Did they foresee the AI
Wouldn't that be
run
lovely?
up? So again, I would say my first question would be, why did we purchase this? What's our long-term plan for this? How does it fit into my portfolio? But as a unit, as a vehicle itself, it's a nice opportunity to be more concentrated in a lot of cases, and it's also another lower cost way to invest.
My wife is so smart. Where do you keep all that knowledge?
That's really nice, man. I don't even know what to say to that.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And our next texter writes, since our taxes have gone up during retirement and now RMDs come into play, I now have IRMA to worry about. How can I pay less taxes? I also understand that Social Security will not be taxed in Missouri anymore. Most of my money is in 401ks. Thanks.
This is a great question. So you are correct. Social Security will not be taxed at the state level any longer.
Thank you, Governor Parsons.
That
we
was
love
nice. However, that income still does go towards your overall modified adjusted gross income. The taxable portion of it does, which is not contingent on if you're taxed at the state level or not.
And he didn't specify, but I'm going to assume most of his 401k money is not Roth. So
Right.
It will be subject to taxes at his tax rate as he makes distributions.
And sounds like he's getting to that required
It sounds
minimum
like,
distribution
right,
age.
exactly, like even if he wanted to put it off, like the government is not going to allow him to do that much longer.
So first thing I would consider is if you are charitable and you have been making your charitable contributions to churches, charities, just from your checking, I would start requesting that those funds be sent directly from your 401k or your IRA, your taxable account.
So from the custodian to the charitable organization.
That is right. So the cool thing is the tax law allows for what's called qualified charitable distributions. You have to be over 70 and a half years old to do this. So since the texter mentioned that he has RMDs, I can deduce that he's over 70 and a half years old. But what he could do is request that the custodian, which is the bank that holds his assets, send a check directly to church every month, every year, all of his charitable contributions. That will go against his required minimum distribution dollar for dollar, but it will not be taxable to him. So we won't be adding on to his income tax situation.
And that is definitely a good thing. It's just really about doing the things that you're already doing, but doing them maybe a little bit more tax efficiently.
That would be my first suggestion. The next would be I would want to take a look at how the rest of your income is structured. Sounds like there might be quite a bit of fixed income, meaning pensions and Social Security, that's building a very strong base for you, which is pushing you into a higher tax bracket. But with just a little bit of information, that would be my very first strategy for helping you to reduce the impact of required minimum distributions.
Gotcha. And I think that just about does it for the text line. I think we've caught up on all of our texts from the previous hour. We thank you for your patience, and by all means, keep them coming.
Keep them coming. We got about 14 minutes left.
And with that, I think we should take our second break of this quickly moving second hour. So don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more Straight Talk on retirement after these messages.
Now, back to Straight Talk on retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Welcome back to our last segment of Straight Talk on retirement this Saturday morning.
We were just talking about how quickly these shows go by.
Time flies, how quickly the show goes, and then every week we're right back here talking to all of you.
Yeah, we got to, just traipsed through the parking lot, and I was saying this morning, I'm like, it just feels like we just did this. Like it just
because we did.
The days just melt into one another. It's like I don't know whether I'm coming or going, but I remember that I had to make this walk. Like, didn't we just do this?
The joys of work. Many of our listeners long remember those days, but they've been retired for a while, probably enjoying every day like it was Saturday.
I forget the personality who used to say, honest work if you can find it. Gotta love it.
Awesome.
Looks like we got another text question in, which is great.
Let's get it.
And our texter writes, well, we're well diversified but wanting more income as REITs or dividend ETFs, which are better. We would like the yield plus a bit of growth and definitely more stability. What do you think?
I would like all of those things too. Income,
I want the growth,
stability.
Income with growth and stability, and it never goes down.
Sign me up too.
Right.
I'll take one of those.
In fact, how much can I put into this?
So I think it's great that you have already defined what your objectives are. You would like more income. I think there's a few key things that I would consider first, which are, where are we holding these assets inside of retirement accounts, outside of retirement accounts?
Great point.
If we're looking to generate some income, maybe.
Is it income now or is income later?
That's also a good question. Where I was leading was, we all shied very heavily away from the bond market as interest rates were rising over the last several years. It appears, I am not a prognosticator, nor have I spoken personally with Mr. Powell, but it appears that at the upcoming
September
meeting, we're going to be looking at some rate cuts. We're seeing inflation easing. You all have heard this for days, weeks, ever since our Monday pullback that was pretty traumatic for some people.
I'm not seeing inflation ease.
No? You're still going to the grocery store for $5
I've been
bacon?
looking.
Nonetheless, as we see rates start to ease, looks like the bond market might become an attractive place not only to continue to find decent yield in certain areas of the market, it might be an opportunity for you to find some tax-preferred income. If you're holding funds outside of retirement accounts, you might be able to take advantage of municipal bonds, which tend to pay a little bit higher because you're taking on a little bit more risk than just government paper. But it also creates, if you're buy the municipal bond from the state you're in, you get to alleviate the taxes on that income. So that might be an interesting alternative. I would say that when you are looking at REITs, this is something that there are a few drawbacks to these. They are generally considered income producers in the sense that you're usually using different types of mortgages to create income. One, they tend to be relatively illiquid. Two, they don't necessarily create consistent income depending upon the investment that you have chosen. And three, I would really go back to the liquidity side of things, because if you find yourself in a position where you no longer like the investment, or the investment is not going the direction that you'd like, it's going to be much more difficult for you to extract yourself from that from many other types of investments. ETF funds are excellent if you're looking at inside of your after-tax account, because they generally function much more similarly to stocks in that they don't pass through any capital gains. The only time you see that is when you make the sale of the security itself, unlike a mutual fund. So I think you're absolutely on the right track. I think that what you'll want to do is really drill down deeper as to what type of income you're looking for, when you're looking for it, and then also maybe we're not looking for one asset to perform all of these functions, meaning income, growth, and stability.
I was just thinking that.
Maybe we're
dividing those responsibilities up among your asset base so that, assets are doing very specific things.
Exactly, because it is going to be difficult to find, I'll call that the Goldilocks of investments. I want yield, I want growth, and I want stability. I think the overall portfolio should be achieving that.
We call that investment product heaven. We want all these.
No, that's great. You know what? And that's really the nice thing is there's such a diversity, and we've heard so many different products, so many different investment vehicles discussed this morning, unit investment trusts, ETFs, REITs. These are all different these are all different tools to use to get you to where you want to go.
You just stole my thunder because I was just thinking, the product is, your father likes to remind me, is never the solution.
Sure.
The solution may involve a product, but ultimately we're trying to get to that goal. So we're always working backwards. What is like the highest point of the pyramid, and then we're coming back down from there.
And not to be too philosophical, but I would just wonder, I know we've seen, over the last 12 years at this point, we've seen maybe one rotation out of the growth side of the economy into the value side. We're kind of experiencing that right now because we had such a massive run-up in a very select number of securities that all happened to be growth-oriented. Then we started to see a rotation out of those securities into other sectors of the economy, many what we would consider the value side, which would be banks, insurance companies, oil companies, companies that tend to produce dividends versus reinvest in the company themselves. So we think of tech as growth as a very simplified way to think about the market, and then the other side as value. But when we've lived in an environment where the last 12 years have been growth oriented, maybe the focus shifts from specific growth, income generating securities to growing and skimming the gains.
Absolutely.
And that's another approach to take to get you to a similar place. There's never anything wrong in creating balance in the portfolio, meaning against growth, against value, income versus growth, things like that.
And a lot of these value mutual funds, and I mean, they're holding things that they're still growing. I mean, it's not like, you're just buying it for Walmart still grows, ExxonMobil still grows. They just don't have that explosive growth that we've seen in some of these other names.
And I think that, just to lead that leads me into a thought, which is as you're reviewing your portfolio, many people do so around this time of year because we're all creatures of habit. Especially if you had children, this was back to school time, so it's almost like a fall cleaning. Like we're getting checklist time. We're getting ready to go into the next year before the holiday season comes up. Reviewing your portfolio as managers of mutual funds, which many people hold mutual funds inside of their retirement accounts, inside of their 401ks that are still at work. Although each of these funds has an investment objective, in many cases they can be broad enough that you could see the same company held across multiple mutual funds, especially as companies, and we all know who they are, grow significantly in size, making up larger and larger portions of the indexes in terms of weighting. They tend to appear in many different places. So you'll want to sit down with your advisor, or if you happen to be the individual managing your securities, I would drill down further, not just to the names of what you are invested in, but what are those specific securities holding if you're not holding individual company stock. And you can easily tell what you've got there because you may see that you've got some duplication, and that might be your opportunity to make some adjustments, not only on the diversification side of things, but getting your portfolio to do the things that you'd like it to do. Just like our last texter said, I'd like a little more income from this portfolio.
Absolutely. And our next texter writes, love the show, used to live in St. Louis, now I live in Denver. Obviously I can't come down for a coaching session, but are all coaching sessions in person, or do you offer telephone and or Zoom meetings? Sir, you are in luck.
Can we come and visit you? I would love to. We could do a home visit in Denver.
A home visit? The home doggers are running out to Denver. That would be a nice 10-hour drive.
Right, but it's beautiful out there. I would be happy to do a Denver home visit. But realistically, what were you going to say, Rob?
I was just going to say that no matter where you're listening to us, I shouldn't say no matter where, because you could be out of the country, but if you're in the United States,
that's right,
we are more than happy to do an in-person meeting if you're in town. But if you're not, Zoom, telephone certainly work.
Absolutely. in most cases, our clients have originated in the St. Louis or Illinois area, Missouri or Illinois area, and then, their retirement takes them other places, and we're happy to follow along. But if you happen to have already taken yourself somewhere else, but you'd still like to work with us, you're more than welcome to give the office a call, 314-863-0008, or send us an email, Aaron or Robert at jblfinancial.com. We'll be happy to arrange a complimentary coaching session with you. Thanks for listening this morning, and we'll see you next week.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.